Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, we're going to get a look at the latest face-to-face with the developers in March, and there's a lot of exciting stuff to talk about, including kingdom merges. I've got some strong feelings on what those could look like, but here we finally get to see what the developers are thinking, so let's get a peek. From a goose, hey everybody, here's another face-to-face. In this face-to-face, we'll look at some of the most hotly discussed topics in the community. By the way, just use the timestamps. You can jump to whichever part you'd like for this video. Keep in mind, these are in the early stages, not final plans. Good to know. Let's get after it. Can you tell us more about your plans for merging kingdoms? At our Vietnam meetup, we discussed future plans for consolidating low-activity kingdoms. We received a ton of helpful feedback from the governors, and after analyzing the suggestions, we received our dev team came up with a preliminary plan. They're going to have special merger stories. Your kingdom will only be eligible for merging if it has completed its first season of Conquest Story and has a very low number of active players. If selected for merging, your kingdom will only have one story it can register for in its next lost kingdom. It's going to be King of the Nile, although this may change. This gameplay special merger story will be the same as regular season of Conquest, but at the end, there'll be a merger period, currently planned for about 5 days. During this time, your kingdom can form a team with other kingdoms participating in a merger story, even if they're in a different lost kingdom. At the end of the merger period, your kingdom and its teammates will be combined into a new kingdom. Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts, but we're not done yet because there's additional notes. Merger stories will only open if there's enough eligible kingdoms to form a matching pool. If there are too many eligible kingdoms, more merger stories will open as needed. Your kingdom can choose to skip a merger story, but will count as failing to have signed up for a story. If a kingdom fails to find a team or a team's active player count is still too low, the system may intervene. For new kingdom naming, merged kingdoms will have a new kingdom number and name separate from those of its constituent kingdoms. This is kind of wacky because kingdoms are arranged into like a continent shape, and I guess this is going to break that. Not that the continent shape ultimately ended up meaning much other than who you compete with for Zenith of Power, right? So here are my thoughts on merging, and I shared this in a prior video, and I've had time to reflect on it, and I feel pretty good about what I shared, which is that if we're going to merge to form bigger kingdoms, we first need to understand like what really is the problem we're solving. And what the developer said is some number of kingdoms don't have enough players to play Ark of Osiris. So from the perspective of solving that problem, of not even having enough active players to field an Ark team, I think that this makes a lot of sense, where they're giving a way for kingdoms that want to merge the ability to merge. It's actually not forced, which I think is really nice, even though arguably some of these kingdoms maybe should be forced to merge. And that would, I think, solve the problem of there aren't even enough active players in this kingdom to do something as simple as field an Ark team. Now, with that said, I feel like there's a bigger exercise that is obviously a lot more thinking and a lot more game balance influencing, where you take a step back and say, what does a good kingdom size look like anyways? What is the most fun kingdom size possible? Because as it turns out, this is extremely consequential and has had very, very deeply meaningful impacts on the way that the game actually works. Let me explain. Because of the Imperium system, kingdoms were thrown into a one alliance world. I called this out over 3 years ago, and I said all kingdoms are going to move in the direction of being 1 to 2 alliance kingdoms, and that proved to be true. But the weirdness of that is that you can still register 600 accounts for KVK, and if you don't register 600 accounts, you're at a disadvantage, which means you have to register farms, which means gameplay features a lot of farm filling. Right? You see where this is going? Now, these big maps that are often one alliance versus one alliance, at least for the big kingdoms, get a little bit weird because you really kind of need like many alliances to fill all that land and fill all that space. So like, at least at the top end, these big KVKs have become largely about not only how well do you manage your account, but in many cases, hopefully you have at least a dozen farm accounts you're managing that can be pulled into the rotation for KVK to both fill stuff and get credits for alliances and. So long story short, if I were taking a big step back, I would ask, is a one alliance kingdom really the best thing for the game? And I think the sweet spot was much closer to like that 4 alliance kingdom model, personally. I don't know how we'd ever get back to that world, to be honest. But I think a kingdom environment is just a lot more like dynamic when there's that many people and there's less reliance on farms potentially and farm gameplay and. So long story short, I think this sounds like a good solution for the problem they stated, which is to fix critically small kingdoms and allow them a chance to not be so small. You could always migrate, but like, I guess this doesn't use any passports, right? And then there's still that bigger question of like, what do you want your end game kingdom to look like? And today it's a 1 to 2 alliance situation. Would be kind of neat to see that be a, 4 to 6 alliance situation like we had once upon a time, but I don't know how you'd ever get there, right? Like I don't know how you'd get there. The only option is just put more kingdoms into war camps, right? Okay. And that's like your closest approximation. New kingdom map. Oh, wait. Hold up. We're not done yet. Merged kingdoms still. Because, okay, so after you merge, what happens? All holy sites and passes will be temporarily closed, gradually unlocking as the kingdom chronicles progress. All Alliance fortresses, flags, and Alliance resource centers will be removed. All resources used to build them will be refunded. During the merger period, certain kingdom-wide ranking events, Mightiest Governor, will be paused. Merged kingdoms will not be able to sign up for KVK for 2 weeks after merging. New events will be launched in merged kingdoms to help them quickly rebuild. Right. It almost goes without saying, you're going to need a period of time to rebuild your territory before you enter into KVK. And like the cost of flags has to be extremely low. The time to build them has to be low. And that's easy to do, right? This face-to-face won't go into how other kingdom assets, e.g. special immigration points and vacation permits, and kingdom stats, rankings, will be handled. Stay tuned for future announcements that'll go into more detail on this project. Yeah, I mean, the business of merging kingdoms it's messy. There's a lot to cover here. I think this seems fine. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Like, I think this solves the problem that they said they were trying to solve. So, what new game modes are you planning to add? We're currently developing a new game mode tentatively called Supreme Strife. In this game mode, the top season of Conquest Governors will be able to form cross-kingdom teams, cross-kingdom, battling other teams to control holy sites on a brand new map. This game mode is tentatively scheduled for every weekend. Whoa. Bro, I don't know that I have time to KVK every weekend. Like KVK battles, combat in this game mode can result in your units being self-wounded or killed. At the end of each match, however, you will be refunded a large portion of your dead units and resources and speed-ups for healing. If it's not 100%, I'm fighting against what my kingdom is trying to do. That's the issue here, right? Like, imagine you've got a kingdom that's trying to recover from KVK so that as a kingdom they can go to another KVK, and then you've got people running into these things doing little side quests for their own personal gain, because besides regular items, members of the champion team will receive a rare limited time title they can display. Bro. The official name and specific rules for this game mode are subject to change. My 2 cents on this one, and we obviously need to see the implementation, but unless you're getting back 100% of what goes into this, you're fighting your kingdom's ability to be ready to fight. And I think that in a top tier kingdom, that ends up being problematic. And there probably will be very aggressive rules from those top tier kingdoms about participating in this at all. Do I like the idea of like a cross kingdom team? Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, like, I think the spirit of what is here is really cool, but the details of this implementation are going to matter a lot, right? It's going to matter a lot. If this game mode had no permanent losses, it would just be all upside, right? Like just 100% upside. So it's just a question of like what percentage of your stuff you're permanently losing. Because again, fighting the kingdom's ability to fight is like something that large kingdoms will police very, very, very heavily, I suspect. Armament Transmutation is too difficult. Do you have any plans to optimize the system? Our original plan was to implement an armament fusion system, which would work like this. If armament B has a valuable attribute, you can fuse it with armament A with a 50% chance to replace one of armament A's less valuable attributes, such as gold gathering speed with the valuable attribute. Our hope was that this would increase the value of armaments with only one good attribute, as it could be used to gradually improve other armaments, which would in turn make armament events and chests more rewarding. However, we encountered a number of problems in the design state. Currently, it's relatively easy to obtain an armament with a single 2.5 or even 3% attribute, and the max possible attribute bonus is only 3.5. If this armament fusion system is launched, the gap between armament attributes will rapidly close, and many governors will be able to very quickly max out their armaments. We aren't sure how receptive governors will be to such a balance-shifting change. Transmutation stones, transmutation crystals, and this new armament fusion feature would all be systems in service of armament attributes, and the coexistence of all these separate systems runs the risk of making things overly complicated. Due to these issues, we have yet to determine a final plan or launch time for the armament fusion system. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, we'd love to hear them. Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to handle this. I think one thing that would be really cool would be to be able to spend something reliably and get a reliable outcome. It's no secret that I think randomness in these kinds of systems, for me personally, are not as fun. And there's so much randomness in the sort of armament system. The thing that I would love to see is, yeah, you can use your transmutation stones to try to get specific types of stats. And then you could use either transmutation stones or something else to then elevate those stats in a not random way, right? So like, I mean, ideally, I just don't like randomness personally in any of my in-game systems, other than like sometimes combat numbers to keep things interesting. But in this case, what I would say is like, I have an armament, it's got 1.7 infantry attack, because you know that how it goes for me, right? And I'd like to see that number be really high. So instead of just re-rolling the slot over and over and over and over and over and over again, just praying to RNG to get a high-ish roll, if I could take that stat, which is already infantry, and take it from 1.7 to 1.8, then 1.8 to 1.9, then 1.9 to 2, and 2, all the way until it's 3.5. That's what I would like to see, right? I think that would be a huge W. And then transmutation stones and crystals would exist for the purpose of largely getting the right combination of stats. And then you have a pathway to elevating those stats. But like, recently I got a double inscription armament. It's got like slightly worse stats than my single inscription armament. And I'm like, it's actually just like maybe not even better. And so, I try to minimize the number of situations where winning still ends up being losing with the armament system. That's what I would look to do with that, where like you get something better, but then you get wrecked on other randomness, and then it's like you won, but you lost. That's what I would try to curtail. And I think what I proposed would totally do that. And it would not add a new currency. You wouldn't have to add a new currency. You could just use stones and even crystals, right, for a bigger effect in what I was proposing. But that could also be confusing, where you have currencies that are used for more than one thing, right? We're mobile gamers. We can't make it too complicated. You ever step into Soroli with pickups? You know what I'm saying, all right? Like, you better keep it real simple. GG. What are our plans for improving quality of life in the future? Our plan for quality of life improvements can be divided into 2 levels: systems and events. On the system level, we want to reduce the burden of everyday activities. For example, we're currently considering adding the ability to automatically attack barbarian troops and search for barbarian forts while you're logged in. Bro, I asked for a barb fort search function, actually not even kidding you, like 5 years ago. I'm serious. I asked for a barb fort search function like 5 years ago. A lot of games have that as a standard thing. Others do not. I think the reason they don't do it is because the rewards for barb forts tend to be very good, and they're worried maybe about botting, but a barb fort search function will be huge. Yes, you need to solve the bot problem. Should all your players who, want to play the game suffer for the bot problem? I mean, I guess, the way we have to solve it is by not having a search function, then like, okay, but I think a barb fort search function will be a huge, huge win. Auto barbing, it could, I think the thing that it would need to do, you'd need to be able to like auto barb when you're in like KVK. Like if I could, I spent, not even kidding you, like 20 plus hours spending my action points this KVK. But if I could just like open my device, tell it what level of barbs to hit, and my armies would move around the map and group up together and all hit together against those barbs, that would be an amazing quality of life feature. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I am actually very excited for what they could do with this. And I'm very happy to see a barb fort search function hit the menu of things the devs are looking at. That's cool. On an event level, our priority is to optimize the basic experience of participating in events, such as adding one-click button to claim all event rewards. We also plan to optimize specific events based on community feedback, such as Alliance Mobilization, Golden Kingdom, etc. I think that's cool. I think that the number one thing would be if these repeated events have like inherent fun replayability. But if they don't, then perhaps after having done them some number of times, like, hey, I could click a button and just get all the rewards. So it's like, you know, we've escorted the caravan like how many hundreds of times? And so, you know, like, do you want me to go escort the caravan again? I don't know what the answer is, truth be told, but I'm glad they're looking at it. Acquiring new armaments in Season 2 is unrewarding. A lot of armaments seem useless until SOC. The Season of Conquest adds many new commanders with new mechanics. With these commanders and their mechanics unavailable until Season 2, a lot of the armaments designed for them seem useless. We're currently planning to release certain SOC commanders prior to Season 2? Wait, what? While also adjusting the skills of some of these commanders to better fit the combat environment of S2? Our hope is that this will allow governors to familiarize themselves with these new mechanics earlier, allowing them to plan out the commander and armament development in advance. The biggest thing for me is like, wait, you're going to put SOC commanders prior to Season 2? Okay. That was unexpected. That was definitely unexpected. I don't know what to say to that. That is surprising, while also adjusting some of the skills. I guess what they're doing is they're giving you access to commanders earlier. They're making it so that you can get value, I guess, from the armaments and be in a situation to sort of like plan for what you'll need. Okay. I mean, yeah, the thing I'm struggling with is like, you don't want to make it too confusing for new players, but also giving them access to more tools seems like it could be cool. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, all right? High damage makes KVK battles way too fast. I agree. I have to constantly form new troops and spend tons of resources. Are you planning on adjusting the pace of combat? Yeah, so if you go watch my really, really old videos, like when you would go fight a troop, it would take like 2 minutes or something, like a really long time. Maybe 2 minutes, I'm exaggerating. But like, it would take a long time to sad face a troop. Like, you'd be fighting it for a while. But in today's combat environment, if your troop steps out of position for a fraction of a second, dead. Whoop, up, whoop, dead. Up, dead. Right? Like, your army's just dead. And I'm, you know, being all snappy because like that is what it is. Like, as a player, you're like, oh no, my army's swinging around, dead. Right? Like, it's that fast, bro. It's that fast. Okay. And that has led to the back and forth meta. Back and forth. Nobody wants to charge in because dead is what you get. And you get completely dumpstered in your report. But it just is what it is. That's the reality, right? You hit a target, your armies start to fan out, and you have to click somewhere else before they fan out, or dead is what you get. And you look at your report and it's like, that sucks. And I've been doing this for like the last 2 weeks, which is why it's top of mind for me, right? The power creep on punch level has gone through the roof, bro. So in regards to overly high damage causing battles to be too fast, we're currently calculating in-game damage statistics. Based on these calculations, we're trying to optimize the pace of KV battles by adjusting KVK buffs and crystal technologies. In regard to excessive resource requirements, we've already launched a feature that refunds healing resources at the end of KVK. We're also considering adding a recurring event where you can trade building and research speedups for healing speedups. So I think they're onto something here, and I would encourage them to look really deeply at this, because now that they mention it, yeah, like the power creep has led to DPS creep. The DPS creep has led to gameplay changes where now literally you have to back and forth, 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 you know, attack, retreat, attack, retreat, attack, retreat, attack, retreat, attack, retreat, attack, retreat for literally like 12 plus hours a day, 7 days a week until your zone closes or somebody runs out of resources. And the way gameplay used to be is like you actually just like attack and like the ball moves in and like you all attack together and like stuff happens. But the instant poofing of your marches is like a phenomena that has evolved over the last few years. That is, I think, I mean, I'm almost certainly misremembering a little bit, but like it is a dramatic change from how I remember the game once to be. I could just be misremembering, honestly. Like I'd have to now go watch my own videos and do some digging. But I think the power creep is undeniable. The implication of the power creep is undeniable, which is huge amounts of resources spent and huge amounts of speed up spent. And I think that's totally worth looking at. I agree. I agree to all of that. The simplest answer is to give players a refund of more speed ups and resources spent on healing. But I think, best answer would be to take a big step back and say, what do we want the combat experience of Rise of Kingdoms to be? And what tweaks can we make to these little systems that would actually end up dramatically influencing how it feels to play in the open field? And I think if they did that, there could be a lot of other ripple effects that would need to be balanced, but I think that would be very interesting for the outcome. Kingdom Bugle messages can't be closed. They block unit type selection when forming a rally. How do you plan on fixing this? This will be all resolved in the next update. Awesome. Bugles, everybody. Will you be adding new accessories for combo and smite commanders? I don't know who asked this question, but answer, we're currently in the design process. There'll be more info soon. I really feel like one of my top requests for Rise of Kingdoms would be the ability to transfer one piece of equipment into another type of equipment, quite frankly, right? And I think having a diversity of equipment that is valuable in different situations would actually be really cool. Today, in my opinion, you've got like meta and then noob traps. And hopefully you don't make a noob trap, or hopefully something that was once meta doesn't become no longer meta. For example, having a dagger and a web was considered to be meta for a very long time. As I mentioned, the nature of open field combat has turned from committing to fights to pop fests, where like out of position dead is the situation. And in that world, the things that were once meta are now starting to be questioned as to how valuable they are. Ring, dagger, web. I don't think it makes sense for players to suffer from a meta shift, especially when the cost is so steep for changing around your equipment. So in my ideal world, my number one thing that I'm looking for, possibly number one thing that I'm looking for this year, and we'll put it in the top 5, is the ability to take equipment and change it from one thing to something else. I think that would be so cool for the game. It means people would go and invest in other armaments. It means people will go and invest in other commanders that they wouldn't have invested in before. And it means people will generally just be having way more fun with the game. So am I on board for like a new combo or smite accessory? Sure, but like, please don't make me eat a 50% material cost on the base cost of what I made, plus the pattern, plus 100% of the materials committed refining, plus 100% of the materials committed to awakening, right? Like, please give me something better than that to take what I have and enjoy these new things. So yes, I want new things. I think new things would be healthy for the game. And also, I think we need a system to transition from what we have to what we want. Okay, other than like eating a material cost that is steep. Can you add the ability to have a separate equipment loadout for Canyon game modes? It's very tedious to manually switch my equipment every time. I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more, which is why I think they already said they're doing this, which is huge W's. Huge W's. I actually don't think it's wrong for the developers to repeat themselves. I've often said leadership is about repetition. I learned that from someone who is arguably actually the best boss I've ever had. And so, yeah, no, I mean, it's perfectly fair for them to repeat the fact that they're already doing this. Will you continue to optimize the automatic title appointment feature? We're delighted to see how well received the automatic title appointment feature has been. I'll just add to this that, and it's probably annoying how much I'm patting myself on the back these days, but I constantly say that like the leaders of this game are overburdened and they also deliver the most value possible to the player. If you go in and reduce the burden on the leaders for the activities that are mundane but necessary, you allow those leaders to then focus on the things that are only able to be accomplished from human interaction and relationships. And that is the most important thing you could possibly do, I think, for this game, is allow the leaders to focus on those relationships rather than the BSE, do it a million times management activities. I say BSE because like it's not rocket science to change a title around, but it is taking a lot of time and attention. So I love this feature. I think it's awesome. We've also received a ton of helpful suggestions for how to improve it. Features we plan to add include the ability to give up titles early, more options for title durations, the ability to set a city hall requirement for applications, and more. Here's my pro tip, okay? And look, like I used to work in product management, but often as a product manager, you try to find like the cheapest solution possible that solves the problem in a very satisfactory way. And you could have a bunch of engineers spend a bunch of time coding this title boss system, or you could just have all these buffs that are getting passed around be passive benefits that are available all the time. The zero code solution ain't bad. Like, does having, I will, whatever. We already have this system, but I'm always looking for like a no code solution. And like the no code solution is just make the buff passive. And then you've completely eliminated the debt to the leaders. And also the players just get the buffs. Now that said, there's probably some psychology around getting a buff, but whatever. I mentioned this in the past. I'm being a leader, repeating myself. Kingdom and alliance management is too much of a pain. Will you be adding features to reduce the burden? Oh, hey, that thing I just said was the most important thing. Okay, not most important. I think I might have said equipment was up there. But due to the wide variety of Kingdom and Alliance management styles, our previous optimizations have focused on universal issues, automatic title appointment, Alliance passports, or pass lists, etc. As we've continued to discuss this issue with the community, however, we've come to the conclusion that our quality of life improvements thus far have been far from enough. As such, we'd like to ask governors to fill out this survey so we can collect additional feedback and suggestions for future improvements. Huge. So I think, my very obvious suggestion here is going to be take all these repeatable activities like passing around titles and ask the fundamental question, does this really add value to the player's time? And like, is that the same time spent by a player, could it be better spent another way? So, I already covered why I think that would be big here, but this applies to all ways in which leaders spend time. You know what you should do? This is a design activity. Okay, so I used to hire designers, so I know a thing or two, but I'm far from being a designer myself. But like, I would follow around some leaders from big kingdoms and see how they spend their time. I'm not even kidding. Like, what percentage of their time do they spend on each activity? And then I would go in and find all the things that, are repeated activities that do not take skill, and I would remove them. So like passing around the RCF. How many hours are leaders spending getting systems to pass around the RCF? 1960 literally deleted their coalition, managing their coalition size or whatever was going on over there. Like, take away the things that are repeated activities that don't really take skill, but just add burden, right? Like, the +1 to the coalition size for only one coalition is adding burden without adding, like, I mean, you have to do it. You have to do it to be meta. But like, those are the sorts of things I would systematically eliminate. Because look, it might sound dumb, but I've been on the ping receiving side of like every 8 hours or however many hours it was, you get a ping that's like, hey, you need to change the RCF. Hey, you need to change the RCF. Hey, you need to change the RCF, right? Like, I'd hunt for those things and just boom, knock every single one of those out, right? Anyways, this video is long enough. I actually can't believe how long it is. I got to get back to fighting. GG's. If you enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here. Consider subscribing. If you made it all the way 31 minutes through a Chisgule Gaming video, you probably had a good time. So thank you for throwing a like on the vid. Definitely let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And go fill out this survey. Big thank you to the makers of Rise of Kingdoms for sponsoring this video. And honestly, being such incredibly chill sponsors to work with. They honestly give me like a lot of like latitude to give genuine feedback, which is huge. And that's just big W's on the developers. So big thank you to them. And yeah, man, I'm really sleep deprived from KVK fighting. So go check out my KVK fighting. Cards in the end screen from recent KVK fights. Yeah, do that. And I'm going to get back to it. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.